Well, welcome, Audra. It's good to see you. Thank you so much, first of all, for taking the time to meet with me and be willing to get in front of the platform that I get the privilege of helping out with and talking to us a little bit about your platform and your campaign and what your goals are. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself, and why did you decide to run for school board this year?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. A lot of people don't have time to get out and go to these forums and this kind of thing. They want to do it from their house or from the comfort of their home. So I really appreciate you doing this. I think it's a great idea. A little bit about me. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of three. I've been in the district for 18 years. My husband and I have been married for 26 years. We're small business owners. We have been in business in Kingwood for the last, I think it's 14 years. Um, that provides me a lot of, I guess, experience with not only conflict, but wearing different hats and all that kind of stuff. My community involvement started early on with our family was a very big in the lacrosse community, and we had players not only from Kingwood, but we had Atascocita players. My husband coached for 6 years. He went all the way up from middle school to high school level. That stopped in 2017 when I had twins the first time go through, and they graduated in 2017. And then lo and behold, we had another one. So she's actually a current graduate this year. So that gives you a little bit about another thing. I guess two other things I'd mention is I've also been on the board with National Charity League chapter here in Kingwood, and that dealt with the vice president position of philanthropy, which if anyone out there knows National Charity League, that is a big job, which they call a big job. And so I did have, I had the pleasure of sharing that job with another friend of mine. I mean, I couldn't have done it by myself. We had 18 liaisons that we had to train and mentor, and we had, that many 18 philanthropies that we had to get the legal documents from. We had to make sure we had, excellent communication between those. We had to resolve problems where there were problems, and this was like coming off of COVID, right? So there were some hiccups there, and it was a little hard to navigate. So I do have that. I've also been a part of the Humble ISD Community Leadership Academy this year, which has taken me all over the district, into all those schools, into a lot of the classrooms, a lot of the career technology wheels, and the just I guess places where with me being a parent, it hasn't taken me with my kids. So that experience has been like just phenomenal. I've had the pleasure of listening to the CFO, the deputy superintendent, the superintendent, the board, just a lot of good, I guess the ability to ask questions in those is just, you can't really get that anywhere else right now. So that's me. But as far as why I decided to run, it has a lot to do with the difference in my two, I guess, ages of students. I had 2017 graduates. So that was 2013 to 2017. It was at the high school level. And then now I have a 2023 graduate. Based on those two perspectives that I've had as a mom, I've seen declines in the district. And one aspect of that really got me off the couch was the curriculum that came across our front door. And so I guess I'll start off with that. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to kind of touch base on that topic because I was looking at the platform that you listed on your website, and I've listened to you in both forums that I've been to, and you mentioned curriculum quite a bit. So, if you were elected, what impact are you hoping to have on curriculum and Humble ISD? What's kind of your thoughts in that area? What are your concerns?
Well, I let me just say that the curriculum that we experienced was let me just explain what I experienced. That'll kind of tell you what got me involved, and then I'll kind of go into what I I can do as a board member, because there are limits. So the first thing that we got, she experienced in curriculum, just, when you see it on a national level, and then you that's one thing, right? That could be rhetoric. That could be not in Texas. Surely they're not doing that here. But when you see it in your kids' classroom, their assignment, it's a big deal. So she had and I don't know if you can see this, but she had an English assignment that basically used the sunglasses to evaluate her literary text. And so that was I guess the basis of it. And I'm not going to get into, it takes too long. But when you're using Marxist ideology on a 15-year-old, and it really raises questions without that historical background about what that really was and what it led to historically, it kind of it brings validity to that ideology. In my mind, it's not really a valid theory because of what it led to. And so she didn't have the historical context. And so I really had a problem with that. And I brought it to the teacher, and I got a long list of teaks where I didn't see anything about Marxist ideology in there. But I really felt like it was teaching her what to think instead of how to think, like really engaging those wheels in a 15-year-old mind, and like, okay, man, I got to like analyze this. Let me think about what's in common, what I can compare and contrast and that kind of thing. No, it was teaching her what to think. The board agreed with me that this should not have been in the classroom. So that's one. Now, fast forward to last year, fall 2022, she had another assignment that I had an issue with. And this had something to do with a video. It was a YouTube video, and it was just instructional material. And so it started off, she walked in the door and she's like, man, Mom, look at this. I don't know what to think about this. It had to do with, it seemed very benign, but it ended up with a picture of a little boy who was being bullied and ended up in the hospital and this boy couldn't have been more than, this picture couldn't have been more than like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. He's in the hospital because he tried to hang himself. And the words that were coming out of this, it was a TED Talk, basically, is kind of the way it was framed on YouTube. We have failed our children, and we need to do better. So it was, and I don't know what's going on with this child. I don't condone bullying in any way, shape, or form. But when you show pictures of suicide, to a group of kids, it just, you don't know what you're triggering there. You don't know if they have family that's been through that. You don't know what kind of mental health problems their family might have. So, to my view, that's just completely off limits. And it should have been, but it wasn't. And so I met with the teacher, and, I will say that at that point, the teacher and the district employees that were in the room agreed with me. So, when I talk about curriculum, the two main examples that I've brought, they have been pulled. That's good, right? But the problem is, why is it there in the first place? Why are we bumping up against the edge here? Right? And so we just need to get back to we need to get back to fundamentals, stick with the basics, stick with proven techniques that we all had growing up, as far as, learning English, comprehension, spelling, helping them read. Through this process, I will say, like when my daughter was in my 2017 graduate, she got the Green Tree scholarship. And so there's an interview process with that. And they're like, okay, so, one of the questions we have is, what can we do better? You're graduating, what can we do better? And she goes, why isn't my sibling in 6th grade doing AR books right now? And they're like, I don't know. We're elementary. She's like, no, she's not reading her AR books. Like, I had AR books that forced me to read. And she even brought it up to mine too. She's like, Mom, why isn't she doing that? I did that. And my my first thought was, you know what? I'm sure if they're pulling AR books, then surely they've got something else to make sure that those kids are reading. Well, that didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And so that brings me to the answer of, what do I plan on doing about it? If I'm on the board, that kind of goes into board governance. Like as a board member, you can't get into the weeds with these decisions. You can't. You are a board member. You're not the educator. You're not the district leadership. And I know that. But I do know that the board has a responsibility to make sure that the district is going in the right direction. And that leads me to test scores. So, and then I guess I will further answer the question of what I plan to do as far as the curriculum when I get to the board governance part. So.
Okay. All right. So thank you for all of that. You mentioned test scores right there at the end of that. So I want to pivot back a little bit to your website, your platform, the comments that I've heard in the forum. You talk quite a bit about academic achievement. You've expressed some concern in that area, specifically around test scores. So what's causing that concern? Kind of walk us through your thoughts in this area.
Well, what prompted me to look at test scores was the academic rigor in the classroom that my youngest child has seen through high school. Now, I know there's COVID, right? I know that we had virtual learning and that was, an obstacle. We've been done with COVID for a while. And so I've seen, like, especially the last 2 years, just a lack of academic rigor. And that means like challenging the kids, like get them back on track, like right away, right? Once you get off the horse, you got to get right back on. So that's the best thing these kids needed. And I just haven't seen it. And I think that there's plenty of time. There has been plenty of time to do that. And so when I started looking at the test scores, it was clear. This is like a TEA. It's like a data dump. And so I know where all the data came from. When my kids the first round went through, we were 6 points above state average in math. Right now, we're 4 points below state average in math. That's unacceptable. But for reading, we were, right when my first kids graduated, we were about 7% above state average in reading. We're only about 1% above state average in reading now. So that's a problem. And, we all know what's going on with HISD right now. I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but, people may not know that the TEA hands out report cards every year. With Humble compared to Houston ISD on a district level, Humble is 6 points below Houston ISD. So they have about 4 times the population that we do. They also have twice the percentage of economically disadvantaged students than we do. And then they also have 3 times the percentage of English learners than we do. We have 4 failing schools in our district. So SB 3, I think, gave them a pass the way that some schools were rated, but not anymore. I mean, we've got to get these test scores back up.
So tell me a little bit what your thoughts are as far as what's causing this. Does this go back to the curriculum discussion, or are we in a different realm on test scores?
So I as far as your question about does that go back to the curriculum, I know that there's been a lot of curriculum changes. I've talked to other parents, and I've talked to a lot of teachers, and so I know that there are. There could be some factors in there. Now, again, I'm not an educator, but what I could maybe surmise is, we might have some distractions in learning in the classroom when it comes to like the curriculum that the kids are looking at. I know that, there's been more than a few times that my child has been like, really, why are you asking me this? That kind of stuff. So the older they get, they're smart. They know when they're being, I don't know, maybe misled a little bit. And so our educators we don't want to mess with that. Our educators, those are figures of authority who deserve respect. And so my child must respect her teachers. So let's not do anything to jeopardize that. That's one, as far as the curriculum. So I just feel like maybe there needs to be a new curriculum audit. I think the last one was back in 2006. It was a long time ago. There could be a curriculum audit. We could do some evaluations on some of the curriculum that's coming in that from known vendors that really push the limit on some of these things. I've done a lot of research on that. And so the board they approve all these contracts. All these contracts that come through as far as curriculum, those are all approved by the board. And those are discussed in executive session. I know that. Contracts, any kind of issues with the board, any kind of issues with students, discipline issues, if there's issues between the board, and if there's the issue with the superintendent, all that's legally pulled into executive session. So as a board member, I could just start asking questions, because I'm coming from it from a parent's perspective. And, like I said, curriculum got me off the couch. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you for all of that information. Now, you have used a term a couple times, and I want to just tap the brakes and make sure that we understand what you're saying. So you mentioned board governance. It's also on your website, in your platform. It says promote greater board governance in the district. So what does that mean? And what are your goals in that area?
Board governance is, the board. A lot of people don't understand exactly what the board does or doesn't do, for that matter. But it's I'm just going to go over 4 or 5, and this is from my perspective. This is what I've learned. They manage the tax rate, because Humble ISD is a taxing entity. There is a tax office, that's run by the district. They hire and fire their one direct employee, and that's the district leadership. So that's another main thing that they do. And then the third is they approve the budget. They also approve the policies, that come down from the state, basically. And then they'll go into executive session. They also do they approve the contracts. So the vendors, and that's kind of what, I look at. There's vendor lists and there's all kind of stuff. So those are the 3. I see that's 5 things. But as far as what I know, I can, like I said, the role of a board trustee and being effective is, in the way of policy, because through this journey that I've had on, number one, the curriculum, and there's been a lot of talk about library materials and instructional materials and what the difference is and all that kind of stuff. So I've like geeked out on policy. I'll just say that. I mean, I never thought, a year and a half or 2 years, I would have been wanting to actually read this, because it does matter. And I don't think parents, they're busy. They don't have time to go through board policy. And the last thing they want to hear when they have a complaint about curriculum is, oh, well, it's in the policy. Well, really, can we just have a conversation about, like, a human conversation? I should not have to be looking at policy to understand what my rights are as a parent. But that is what we have board governance. And so I want to just talk a little bit about giving you an example of the instructional resources. So I do know that the policy the guidelines come from the Texas Education Agency. And back in April of 2022, they sent out guidelines, I guess, guardrails for library materials and instructional materials to all the districts. And so, TEA did that, and their version of the policy was very parent friendly. It had all about the parents in here and all this kind of stuff. Well, when we got to our board and what we adopted, the district comes up, they have lawyers, they have lawyers, and they look at it. and then they come up with our local version, right? We have the legal framework, and then we have a local policy is what we actually, stay inside of. And so I've seen the difference between what TEA had and what this board approved. And a lot of that parent stuff was just taken out of it. I have the receipts. It's just right here. So and that was voted on, right? And so as far as like library materials, the TEA suggested that the obscenity clause in the penal code go in there. And I will say Robert Scarfo was the only one that said, hey, can we pull this policy off the consent agenda? And can we look at this again? Because I think the obscenity clause needs to be in there for parents to read, because it's the guiding principle of what's obscene and what's not obscene. And so, because of Scarfo, it's actually in the policy now, which they agreed. But my point was, why wasn't it in there in the first place? And so that's the kind of thing that I think, I guess, the value that I can bring to the board, because I'm going to be looking at this stuff. And, I'm not afraid to pull it off the consent agenda and have a discussion about it. So that's one thing. I also think that board governance could do a lot with transparency, a little bit more transparency in the way that the board runs the meetings. Maybe talk a little bit more about what's on the agenda and have it not really cryptic on the agenda, but make sure it's understandable and not in legal terms. Make sure parents can understand what that agenda says. We can also be videotaping those committee meetings. Those smaller committees, those board members do work there too. So I think we can help the parents and video those also. And as far as let me just wrap it up with board governance. The state law trumps our board. Like, we have to follow state law first and foremost. And so the SB3, takes out a lot of this unnecessary distractions in our curriculum, right? It also puts in it talks about parents' rights and what's kind of off limits and what don't step on the toes of the parents. That's kind of what's come out in SB3. So, our policy has to be in line with that. And so, I'm very familiar of what's in the legislative session right now and what could be coming out. So, I'm not afraid to talk about board governance.
Got it. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit about kind of the relationship between the board and the community there in your answer about board governance. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit. So what are your thoughts right now on the relationship between the board and the community, the culture there? Can it be improved? Does it need to be improved? What are your thoughts in that area?
Well, yeah, I think it can be improved, and the single quickest way to do that is to not, I guess, create a contentious relationship with the parents and the board by limiting those parents to 1 minute. I don't agree with that. And that 1 minute's the bottom. They kind of like have to give parents that, right? And so they're at the bottom, and I just don't understand. Why would you do that to parents? They've got other things to do. They would probably rather have a root canal than go to these board meetings and speak. It's not natural for parents, right? They're there because they think there's a problem. They're not just making this up. And so to silence parents like that down from, it was 3 minutes, now it's consistently been 1 minute. It doesn't set well with the public. So I think that could be a great place to start.
Okay. So now, outside of the 1 minute, any other thoughts as far as how can we kind of bridge the gap there between the board and maybe the rest of the community, or is that where we want to leave this part of the conversation?
So I will say that when there is, when a parent finds issues with curriculum or the books, there's a policy, and it's a reconsideration form. And so you fill out this form and you send it to them, and they form a committee and they evaluate whatever it is you have a problem with. And so they can say, no, we looked at it, we don't think it's a problem. And then you can appeal. And then, like, okay, well, let's look at it again, And so what's happening now is these parents are forced to deal with lawyers. These are hired lawyers from the district. I don't know how much money this is costing the district, but these are hired lawyers, and that's extremely intimidating. I really think that we're all adults in the room. We all want the best for the kids in the classroom, the students and the teachers. Bringing lawyers in to talk to parents it's just not, I don't think it's good practice at all. And so I would do a real heavy reconsideration on that. So I think that would go a long way with parents.
All right. Thank you for that. So I'm going to pivot a little bit from some of the conversations we have and get into a topic that maybe is a little weighty. I want to talk a bit about safety for a moment, school safety. And obviously, first thing that comes to mind are external threats. We've seen things in the news very recently about that. But also we've got some internal problems, right? We've got some bullying issues we hear about. We've got fighting and maybe some overcrowding. So what are your thoughts on the current state of school safety at Humble ISD? And do we need to make any improvements based on where you think we're at right now?
Yeah. So, the difference in between when you and I went to school and now what the kids have to face is the phone. And it's also a 24-hour news cycle. And it's also immediate notifications and all of that kind of thing. So I think when things happen in the district, it spreads like wildfire. And parents want to know. They want to know what's going on across the district. So that is an advantage. But as far as like internal violence, I'll speak to that first. Atascocita Middle School has a program called the Iron Man program, and that's a program that I've heard a lot of good things about. It's if you have a child enrolled in that school and you're a father, you can go in front of you can, I'm sure, submit an application, and they do like a background check. They probably interview you and all that kind of stuff. Take all those safety protocol or those precautions, but you are allowed to walk the halls in some, form. I'm not sure exactly of the details, but it's a male presence in those hallways. And from what I understand, the Atascocita Middle School, the number of fights in that school has decreased dramatically, right? So that's, I commend the district for taking I guess maybe if there's any risk in that, I'm not sure, but for going out on a limb and thinking out of the box, right? And so I think we can ratchet that up a little bit, maybe to the high school level. I think there are parents in our community, especially those fathers that know what's going on with the culture, right? And so they know that there's broken families. They know that some of these kids don't have father figures. And so it would just be another set of eyes at the high school level too. Right. Just the presence of more male authority figures in the hallways is going to make some of these, kids that are acting out in terms of fights or bringing knives or weapons or anything like that to school. It's going to have an impact because you have more eyes, right? These are helpers. These are parents, right? So, but as far as like from outside, what's on everyone's mind is Nashville. It was just last week. And so, in that video, that school did everything right. They had double doors. This person blew right past both of them, and then you couldn't see anyone in the hallway. So then everybody was locked down in their classrooms. Well, 6 people still died. And so, there's programs that the state has approved. There's federal programs. One of them is called the Marshall Plan and one's called the Guardian Plan. So, but we need to have a conversation, right? We need to be asking these parents. We need to be asking the teachers. There needs to be like a third-party survey that's not the district might pay for it, but it's a third party survey. And so, let's ask, let's get out, let's find the numbers on who wants to do it and who doesn't want to do it, and why. So, having a conversation about that. Another idea would be, partnering with veterans in our community. I know Creekwood Middle School has a veteran honors program. There's a lot of people connected that go to these I think it's the honor guard. They go to these community events. They are known in the community. What a better way to have these veterans engage and protect these kids from the inside out. Hire them if we need to. Make sure all the liability is taken care of, and make sure the background checks are done, the psychological checks that are done, that need to be done. But allow them. They know how to be armed. They know how to protect. And if we gave them like maybe an office inside some of these schools where they can not only be, on alert, or be there, but also if they're, trying to work, that they've got jobs, right? And so I think these veterans would be honored to go inside these not really classrooms, but I'm sorry, these schools, and have like a dedicated area where they could, use a desk, use an internet connection, bring their laptop so that they can, do what they need to do. Because they're not all retired, right? Veterans are working also. We've got a lot of veteran dads, a lot of veteran grandfathers that are still working. So it would help them, be productive while they're sitting there protecting, just in case something happens. So that's one idea. But to me, that's from the inside out. Those are known community members and known parents and known grandparents. And so that's another way to kind of link the schools with the parents. And it's protecting the kids. No one wants to be unprepared, or no one wants the devastation that would happen to a community if, God forbid, something happened like Santa Fe. I mean, Santa Fe, they're armed. Those teachers are armed. The ones that want to do it, they are armed. And so they're like, no, absolutely not. Not again, not on our watch. And that's one way to prevent it. So I know it's a really polarizing subject for a lot of people, because there's a lot of fear associated with guns. But I'm not asking for teachers that don't feel comfortable with weapons to just go out on a limb and do it. No, that's the last thing I would want. I mean, it has to be somebody that's very comfortable. They go through background checks. They have psychological checks. They know those principles. There's a relationship between them and the schools and the teachers. It's about relationship too. So that's kind of just an idea about safety. Sorry for going so long.
It is okay. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Let's pivot one more time. You probably know this. I asked the community for questions that they wanted me to ask candidates and trustees as part of this campaign. So I just pulled a few of them random. There's no way I could read all of them to you. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. But I pulled a couple that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. So let me read these to you. The first one says, quote, I noticed a very large percentage of teaching positions are filled by trainees or interns. How do you plan to attract and retain teachers with the needed experience to support all of these new teachers?
So teacher retention is down. I mean, I've seen that in my child's classroom. I've heard it from teachers and I've heard it from parents. And I will say this, and I don't know if it's just education in general, why are we having so many teachers retire or, move from our district to another district? That's the concerning part to me. And so something needs to be done. And the way I look at it is, I'm a small business owner. If I have a serious problem with retaining good employees, I mean, I might want to look in the mirror and figure out what's going on. And so that's what we need to do. We need to figure out what is Humboldt ISD doing that might be causing the problem. That's number one. Number two, we've got to bring them in, but we've got to bring good teachers in that really, they want and we could be a district that is known for support inside that classroom, right? If you come to Humboldt ISD and you get a job here, it needs to be known that if you're a teacher, you're going to be supported. Like Humboldt ISD might be pulling other funds or figuring out a way to make that classroom support number one. So the learning can happen, the light bulbs can come on. And so that's what teachers want. They want the ability to teach those kids. They don't want to be micromanaged, and they don't want to be spread too thin. I mean, right? I've heard stories over and over again how some of these classroom atmospheres are just impossible for these teachers. They don't have the pairs they need. There's discipline issues inside those classrooms over and over and over again. And I wouldn't want to work in those kind of situations. So let's empower those teachers to make some of those key decisions. Like if they've tried with that student and it's just a discipline problem over and over and over again, listen to those teachers. Let them have some, the skin in the game to move maybe some of these kids out where it's not a good situation. The general population is not learning. And so we've got to cut out that. And I think once those teachers know that they're supported in the classroom and they're allowed to do what they need to do, and that's what they want. So, let's support the teachers inside the classroom.
Very good. So let me read one more question to you before we wrap up. So, quote, in what ways are you purposely familiarizing yourself with our community outside of your typical social bubble?
Well, one thing that you really start to learn on the campaign realm or inside that realm is you've got to get out there and make those connections with those voters. And so, I've spent a lot of hours and a lot of miles, a lot of steps block walking. And when you start knocking on doors, people you don't know who's behind the door is, you don't know what you're going to get. And that's okay. I mean, I don't have a problem talking to somebody that doesn't agree with me. I really don't. I know where my heart is, and I know why I'm in this race. And so that's at the forefront. So there's the campaign, there's block walking. We just went to Good Oil Humble Days on Saturday, spent most of the day out there. And that's a huge, conglomerate of the communities and different walks of life and that kind of thing. And that's great. I mean, we do live in a very diverse community, and that's a good thing, right? It's diverse thought, it's different backgrounds, and that's great. I mean, that's the spice of life. So I don't unwelcome that. I don't feel like I'm staying in, my little bubble. I feel like I'm, doing everything I can to kind of get out and talk to the people.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Now, that's all the questions I have, but I do want to make sure I ask you, is there anything that I didn't bring up that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Well, I guess, when I talk about, all things like curriculum, the classrooms, the board governance, just to give you one example of kind of a symptom is I just want to talk about the dress code in the high schools. I mean, what on earth has happened to the dress code in the high schools? I don't know where it's gone, but we do have a policy on that, and it's not being enforced. And so, I do have daughters and sons, and, we don't need to be distracting our sons in these classrooms. Why do that? I mean, high school's hard enough. Why create these distractions in the classroom? And to me, that's just one of them. I don't know why we can't enforce a dress code. It's easy.
Got it. All right. Well, let's say somebody watches this or listens to it and they like what they hear and they want to find out more about you. Where do they go? How do they do that?
They can go to my website. It's audraforkids.com. You can go there. You can also sign up if you want. You know, well, you can email me. I think my email address is on there. You can email me directly. I don't mind talking to people if they have a specific question that they want answered. You send me an email. I'll make time to give you a call. I don't mind that at all. Um, but there are, several. The social media link is on there to where, um, anything I do, or we try to document, and it's a feed on there, so you kind of see where I've been and that kind of thing. So yeah, the main, I guess, point of contact is the website, but you can still go there. You can email me. You can sign up for like the emails that we send out to our contact list. So that would be it.
Fantastic. Audra, again, thank you so much. We've spent quite a bit of time together and we've talked about all kinds of things. So thank you for your time and your willingness to join me and get in front of the community that I get to be a part of. Thank you again so much.
Thanks for doing this, Oscar. I really appreciate it.